2026. I was so ready to get out of 2024 when 2024 came to an end. It was the year that my mom had died, the year that my dad went through major heart surgery, barely a year after my marriage ended. So I couldn't get to 2025 fast enough. And then 2025 happened. And so I'm even more ready to be in 2026. And just a few days in, and already we are seeing empires do what empires do. There is a poet that I really love, Drew Jackson, who wrote a poem that I feel is especially meaningful for us today. And so before I start with anything else, I want to read that this morning. So hear his words. The world turns the page in the long book of years, and still the same story is written. The big bad empire drops bombs where it pleases in search of resources in the name of justice. Tell me, are we not tired? Have we not heard this one before? So today, I'm going to be reading something else that we have heard before. But it is not the story of an empire. It is the story of a glimmer that stood up against empire's tired story. It is the story of Christmas told through the Gospel of John, the story of a light that could not be extinguished. So hear these words from John chapter 1 through 18. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. All things came into being through him, and without him, not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life. And the life was the light to all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overtake it. There was a man sent by God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify to the light, so that all might believe through him. He himself was not the light, but he came to testify to the light. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came into being through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, and his people did not accept him. But to all who receive him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become children of God, who were born not of blood or of the will of the flesh or the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and lived among us. And we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. John testified to him and cried out, "This was he of whom is said, 'He who comes after me ranks ahead of me, because he was before me.'" If you can follow that. But from his fullness we have all received grace upon grace. The law indeed was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God. No one has ever seen God. It is only the Son, himself God, who is close to the Father's heart and who has made himself known. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So John's Christmas story doesn't begin with a cradle. It begins with a flicker of light. John says, "In him was life, and life was light to all people. A light that shone in the darkness, a light that even darkness could not overtake." This is the light of Christmas. It is a fragile glow to begin with, a baby born, but not one that is extinguished in a single night. It is a living light, one that entered the world and could not be cast out. And yet we know how this Christmas season works. This is the last Sunday of Christmas for the church calendar. You may have been ambitious and put away your Christmas decorations already. I have not. But we have intentionally left them up here because in the church calendar, we celebrate Christmas for multiple weeks. And so today we are still celebrating the coming of Christ at Christmas. And so we have all of our decorations up. But we know that we will put them away, and the sanctuary always feels a little bit emptier whenever it's all put down. And so in this season, we know that the songs of angels have stilled in the sky, and the star has faded. The princes that came have gone home. The shepherds went back to their fields as well. And it's easy to feel life going back to as it has been. Howard Thurman, the African-American theologian and educator and civil rights leader, names this transition in his poem, The Work of Christmas. The first half of the poem goes like this. He says, "When the songs of the angel is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flocks, the work of Christmas begins." And John would recognize this truth because in his gospel, Christmas is not the end of the story. Christmas is in the beginning. The start of John's gospel is meant to call to mind the opening words of Scripture itself in Genesis. In the beginning, a new thing is created. Yes, Christ has come into the world, flesh and bone, and now God is doing a new thing. The Word became flesh and lived among us. It didn't come into existence and then it got extinguished. It moved into the neighborhood, as the Message version of John 1:14 likes to say. The Word became flesh and moved into the neighborhood. But now, after Christmas, what do we do with that light when the things that remind us of it are put away? Because the turning of the calendar doesn't feel like a fresh start to anybody. It feels like a continuation of what has already happened, as we've talked about already. It's a reminder of all the tragedy and loss we've experienced from a year before. The same struggles that we had before in December are here with us now. The same unanswered questions. And we're tired. Tired of hoping for new things to happen, tired of pretending that time alone heals what cannot be healed. And so John is honest about this in his gospel when he talks about the light, because he also talks about the darkness. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. But there were shadows, and there still are now. Darkness can be confusion, it can be fear, it can be destabilizing, it can be the voice that tells us nothing will change. And John speaks of it honestly. But to tell the truth about the world that Jesus' light enters into. Because it didn't enter in when all of those things had been resolved. Christ's light entered in that very place. It didn't wait for the ideal conditions. It appeared in an empire and an occupied people. Christ's light shines where things are unresolved. Answers are incomplete and the pain is real. And still, John declares, it cannot be extinguished. It will not be overcome. Darkness can try to resist the light, but it cannot extinguish it. That means whatever darkness you're carrying this year, named or unnamed, is not the final word. The light of Christ has been born into the world. He is present with us, already working, already shining, even if all you see right now are the shadows that the light casts. But John also tells us that the world does not recognize the light, that it was present and yet it was still missed. So this tells us something important about after Christmas, and that it's the challenge to continue to see it. It's the challenge and the invitation to pay attention. Just like Jesus coming as a vulnerable child, the light of God's presence often comes quietly, without spectacle. It arrives in ways that can be overlooked for many, not because God's far away, but because we are distracted and there is so much happening. Not because God is silent, but because we struggle to notice with everything else going on around us, that God is still flickering that light of hope. And that's why we have spiritual practices, to remind us when our bodies and our minds don't do that automatically. So today we're going to do a practice called Star Words, not Star Wars. I have to be clear, words. It is a prayer practice done in some churches around the world that give people a word of reflection for the year. They're called Star Words because this practice is often done on Epiphany, which is one of the first Sundays of the year. The story of Epiphany is when we remember the kings, the magi who came to Jesus and brought gifts as they followed a star. And so we're going to use this creative practice and this choosing of a word of intention to move us into deeper connection and awareness with Jesus. So during our prayers of the people, I'm going to invite you to select a star word that I have in this jar. There's 180 of them. So who knows what you'll get. But I invite you to consider this word a guiding word for the year ahead. You're invited to remember this star word often, seeing the ways God might be moving through the meanings and definition as the word continues. They're going to be a practice for us this year. They're going to help us carry Christ's light into a world who is still learning to receive it and to see it. So these small reflections can help us orient ourselves around what Christ is doing in the world. John tells us that from his fullness, Jesus, we all have received grace upon grace. And that means that not everything becomes clear at once. So you may get your word and be like, I don't get it. Mm-hmm. That's okay. Or maybe it means one thing now and, I don't know, a month from now, 3 months from now, it means something different. But grace upon grace means that God gives us what is needed, when it is needed, again and again and again. One layer of grace for this step, another for the next week, another layer for a moment when we look back and realize God was there. This is how light works often, not as a floodlight or a bat signal, but one that reveals the entire road, but a steady glow that shows just enough for us to keep moving. This is why practices of reflection matter, why we return to words and prayers and moments that once seemed small, because grace is like that light, very rarely loud, but it is persistent. And when we pay attention, when we review the year with honesty and prayer, we begin to see how that light never left us, even when we doubted that we could see it at all. And so this brings me back to the second half of Howard Thurman's poem, The Work of Christmas. He said, once all the lights and decorations have been put away, the work of Christmas begins. The work of Christmas, that light of Christ that shines, he says, is to find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among the people, to make music in the heart. The work of Christmas begins because the light has come into the world and has chosen not to leave. The work flows from the grace upon grace flowing within us, because we do not find the lost by our own brilliance, or heal the broken because we have the power to heal. Nor do we bring peace because we are the one who creates it. But we do this work through the light that has been given to us. The light that has entered the world, that is with the lost and the broken and the hungry and the captive, and the one who refuses to turn away, the one who cannot be extinguished. So as we enter this new year with all of our griefs present and questions and exhaustion, hear this blessing. You don't have to be brighter or stronger or more resolved, because the light does not come from you, but it lives within you. It is to bear witness to something quietly, however imperfectly, to the truth that God's light is still at work in the world. Every act of mercy, every choice towards justice, every moment of peacemaking is an echo and a reflection of the Word made flesh, a way of saying, even now, the light is shining. So as we receive these star words, they are not answers, but companions for us. And so now the work of Christmas begins.